please.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to BCPH Thought Leadership for Public Health Fellowship. I know some of us are joining from Asia, Africa, the North America. So it would be nice to have us say our names and the locations we are joining from in the chat. I'm Sabath, the director for the fellowship, and I have Cersei, Dr. Cersei Lecomte with me as well. So we are going to be listening to one of our fellows, Douglas Jordan. Basically go through his thought leadership. So why we are doing this is we are trying to create a platform where thought leaders in different spheres and different disciplines can reach their audience through podcasting. So this live webinar right now is for us to see how that works. So we want to get feedback from you, the audience, on how they are doing and if it's something that they should continue. So we want to keep it real and want to keep it direct. So Doug would be going through with Dr. Brian and the feedback that you have, we want those feedback and want you to listen in and help shapes Doug's thought leadership. So I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Dr. Cersei. She could go ahead to
Thank
introduce herself as well.
thank you so much, Sabath, for that lovely intro. It's so wonderful to be here today. I can't believe we are already at the final session of the live webinar showdown of the BCPH Fellowship. Very happy to be here today with Doug Jordan, one of our fellows. Last but certainly not least, going to be talking about veterans health today. Um, I'm very proud to be co-CEO of BCPH. My co CEO cannot be here today, Dr. Candace Carpenter, but I did want to mention um, we had this is our fifth cohort of the BCPH Thought Fellowship, and I feel like each cohort just sort of rings true, like why we love doing this fellowship and why we love BCPH, and make doing what we do to support new and emerging thought leaders. As Sabath mentioned, at the halfway point, we're going to be having a mid pulse point survey going out. We really need your feedback. And if you would like, you'll be able to watch this later on our YouTube channel. I'll be putting the link in the chat. But without further ado, I want to hand it off to Doug um, so that he can talk to Dr. Brian and hear about all of their thoughts and expertise. So take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Cersei and Sabath, for this opportunity. Like Dr. Cersei said, this is a shootout. This is a tryout for me. And as part of this fellowship, it's been a learning experience of how to do podcasts that are unique within the space of public health. So I'd like to welcome all of you to Veteran Voices in Public Health. And I'll talk a little bit about that. And I'd like to start out by welcoming my guest, Dr. Brian Biroscak. Before I get to Brian's introduction, though, what I'd like to do is, why are we here? Why would I take an hour of your time to talk about veterans' health issues? So I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey to get here, who I am, and then because this is the first episode of this podcast, and I sat through the fellowship and I said, why would anyone want to come and listen to these topics? And I said, what can make it different? I'm in competition to create content that is different, unique, and interesting for people like yourself. So you're here. Now all I have to do is talk about something interesting. So how did I get involved in the Boston Congress for Public Health? Well, I'm actually a retired military officer. I'm a Air Force civilian. I actually work at a military university in MacDill Air Force Base, Florida. I'm coming to you from beautiful Tampa, Florida. I've lived here for about 20 years. So when I left active duty, I liked it so much I stayed. Um, but I'm coming to you today as a private citizen. I am not a member of the government today. I'm not a military officer. I'm a colleague. I'm a peer. I'm a person with questions. I'm actually a disabled veteran. So uh, what this opportunity provided, and actually I was encouraged by a colleague, Mr. Sunny Patel, who's a doctoral candidate at Georgia State University. He's finishing his dissertation right now. He was one of the BCPH's 40 under 40, either last year or the year before, I don't remember. He's a Chancellor's Award winner at Georgia State this year as a leader on the campus of Georgia State, as both a student and an academic. But he said, "Hey, Doug, you're kind of looking at some things. I've done some public health kind of research with him." And he said, "You'd be a good person to potentially apply." So one of the things is to join the fellowship, you had to, one, do an application, and then secondly, you had to be interviewed. You had to be interviewed and accepted, and then there's a series of things that we had to do. So one of the things I'd like to do, you're all here, you've read my bio, you've read Dr. Biroscak's bio, but I think what's interesting is I'm going to show you on the advertisement for the podcast today. There was some information about the fellowship, but I'd like to show you what the mission of BCPH and the fellowship is, if I can find it. It's right here. I'm going to roll back. Because when I interviewed for the fellowship, I looked at the mission statement. Hopefully you can see that okay. And the mission statement of Boston Congress of Public Health is to democratize public health through a social justice lens. And this is kind of not originally my space. So for me, I had to kind of figure out what these terms meant when they were all put together. So democratizing is taking public health out of the hands of really kind of authoritarian government control, and allow people that need the public health to actually have a say. But through a social justice lens, I know there's a lot of controversy right now about diversity, equity, inclusion, but the concept of social justice to me is something that my entire military career, ever since I was a young officer, I believe that I, as a leader in the government and a leader in the military, I always approach my work where we're all in this together and everybody has something to bring and everybody needs something from the organization. So we're all going to take care of each other. And so as I looked at this, I said, this is something that I think I'd like to do. So I applied for it and I got accepted. So the next piece is I'm supposed to be a thought leader. And I said, I'm not sure I know what being a thought leader is. I know I have a lot of questions. So as I read things, I studied communication at the University of South Florida. I started looking at health communication, and that's kind of how I met Brian. Is we suddenly kind of, you converge and diverge and you come back together, and throughout your career, your life, you'll see people throughout your life over and over. But I realized that I was interested in health communication. So I walked all the way from the communication department, Brian, all the way over to public health. And University of South Florida campus is a contiguous campus. It's a big square, but it might as well be separated by hot lava. The ability for someone to go into another department at USF or many universities, right? We stay within our little bubble. We stay within, and this term, some people say it's a pejorative. I think it's just sometimes we stay in our echo chambers, right? We're talking to ourselves. And I think that being a thought leader is the ability to bring people together. So that brings us to veteran voices in public health. I've sat in lots of conversations where people sit on the stage, they're experts, they're maybe the government or the VA or the military or they're academics. And I, as a veteran, am sitting in the crowd and I have questions or I have thoughts, but no one will let me ask a question. No one's interested in what I have to say. And so I said, maybe I can create a space. And so when I pitched Brian and we did our pre-talk, I said, I just want to have a conversation. I just want to hear what you think. And when I pitched my initial idea, Dr. Cersei and Dr. Carpenter are like, we went out and looked. We can't really find anyone doing kind of what you're trying to do. So I think that hopefully I can carve out a little space in social media, in the podcast world, the universe, to let people have conversations. And that's what we're here to do today. So with that, I would like to introduce my first guest, my inaugural guest, and the premiere of my podcast, Dr. Brian Biroscak. So Brian, it's interesting because you read his bio, but Brian graduated from the University of South Florida also in public health. So he was in the building across the hot lava. But the other thing is I actually met him through going to a conference, which is the Social Marketing Association of North America conference. So I actually was trained and educated in an area called social marketing, and Brian today is a leader in that. So with that, Brian, I'd like to welcome you to the podcast. Um, Again, people can read your bio. They can go on to you're a professor at Case Western Reserve University. You were at Yale. You're an editor of the Journal for Semana. But what I'd like to do is I kind of have three areas for the podcast, and I think this is a structure I might try to maintain. Kind of three big chunks for the show. I want to know about you. I'm interested in social marketing. And then I think I'm interested in how social marketing, looking at veterans issues, you being a Pracademic, a thought leader in your area, what are veteran organizations missing? So with that, tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you decide to get into public health?
Thanks, Doug. Very happy to be here. And yeah, I think you and I do have quite a bit in common. So I think this will be a good, fun, and easy chat with lots of commonalities. So hello, everyone. Thanks for the invitation, Brian Biroscak. And yeah, let me know if I get too long-winded here, Doug, but we do have some commonalities. And so I'll try to mix those in. But how I got to where I'm at right now without going too far back is I first started as an epidemiologist. I was an epidemiologist, went to Michigan State University, got a master's there in epidemiology, and was lucky enough to get a job as an epidemiologist at the State Health Department in Michigan. And that was my first real job, I call it. And that was a CDC funded position. And we were studying, designing, evaluating a public health surveillance system for intimate partner violence. Some people call it domestic violence. Really enjoyed it, worked with some great people, and kind of started, to get the itch of sitting within cubicle walls, collecting data, analyzing data. It was interesting, but I was kind of itching to do maybe a little more action research instead of solely observational. So I found out that Michigan State also had a program in health communication. So you talked about your communication background and pursuits. So I applied and I said, I think this would be a good way to get a little more action oriented instead of just collecting and analyzing the data and making recommendations. So I did the Master's of Arts program at Michigan State in health communication, and was enjoying that, learning a lot. And then somebody in one of the early classes talking about the different approaches to messaging and communications mentioned something called social marketing, and I thought, now that sounds interesting. That's it's not only communications, but it's figuring out how can you bundle an entire mix of strategic elements like marketers do to influence consumer behavior, but influence behavior for social good. And that really got my attention. And I think they were probably ready for me to hurry up and finish the program because every class I was in, I was asking about social marketing, but there wasn't anybody there who was really specializing in it. And then continued work as an epidemiologist. And then 2009, I was very fortunate that I was offered a fellowship to the University of South Florida, where they were and are national leaders in social marketing, education, research, and practice. They were a CDC-funded prevention research center, the Florida Prevention Research Center, led by Professor Carol Bryant at the time, and she was succeeded after she retired to emeritus status by Professor Claudia Parvanta. So still happy to have them and other great folks there as friends and colleagues, and that's where I got my PhD in public health with a specialization in social marketing. The last thing maybe to add about education-wise, so then I got my position at Yale in academic emergency medicine, and I was very fortunate to be there, and they afforded me the time and resources to pursue a graduate certificate in system dynamics modeling. That was something that I heard about when I was doing my PhD in public health. And that also got my attention because most of the social marketing work that I was reading or exposed to was focused downstream. How do we apply marketing principles and techniques to influence behavior at the individual level? And then I heard about this thing called system dynamics, which I hope we'll talk more about here today. And that really got my attention. And so I was fortunate that a professor at Washington University in St. Louis, the director and founder of the Social System Design Lab, said, sure, you got a fellowship. We don't have money, but if you can fund yourself, you can come here for a whole semester and learn about our approach to system dynamics modeling. And so Professor Peter Havemann let me move there for a whole semester and learn about system dynamics. And I brought it back to USF and we incorporated it into the final CDC Prevention Research Center 5-year grant that they had there. And I'm still at it now. So I'm here at Case Western Reserve University in the School of Medicine, and we are the Center for Community Health Integration. And I'm very excited and grateful to have the opportunity here to be studying and furthering this idea of integrating social marketing or marketing for social good with system science, in particular system dynamics modeling. And couldn't be more fortunate and happy to have met you, Doug. Thank you for supporting my social marketing seminar series where I tried to further some of these ideas, and hopefully I'll engage and interest people more than confuse today.
So I think this is one of the things that kind of drew me to you is you have whatever term you want to use it, interdisciplinary, post-disciplinary. Michigan State Communication Department is the top communication department in the United States. So Brian got a health communication degree from the top communication department, but yet his background was epidemiology. So, and again, I have a undergraduate degree in like broadcast journalism. I have a master's in international relations, but now I have but I started looking at health communication. So I am very interested in how systems theory, again, and when I've looked in social marketing, and we'll get to true social marketing next. And again, if you have questions about anything, start putting them in the chat. You're not gonna throw us off. We'll take them as they come. But when Brian did his seminar in the spring, I took social networking and social network theory. It's how humans interact. And so what you presented, so maybe you want to talk a little bit about your systems theory for public health, because I to me, because of my background, I said, oh, this makes total sense. I'm sure for a lot of people, it's overwhelming because you're combining two different theories, but it's applied theory. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about that. And this is really what made me want to have you as the first guest, because this is really what needs to happen, I think, is a conversation about looking at the world, how we look at the world.
Absolutely. Happy to talk about this with anybody. And so thanks again for the invitation. And anybody who contacts me afterwards, I will do my best to respond quickly. I'm happy to talk about this. There are multiple, as most of you probably know, multiple approaches, disciplines under the umbrella of system science. You mentioned network analysis, network theory. So to me, I think it's still true that the three big ones, at least in the US, that I see are social network analysis, the way we're connected and how that influences behavior and other phenomena, agent-based modeling, and the one that I was drawn to and am still most heavily involved with, and that's system dynamics modeling. And so at the root of it, the way I think about it and explain it is system dynamics modeling it's a way to overcome all the different barriers to learning when it comes to complex problems. So it's a way to create models that help us understand these complex problems, understand them, and experiment with those models and learn from them, refine our mental models of what we think is causative, what we think is causal, experiment, test out, refine our mental models, make our mistakes in the computer, make our mistakes in the sketches of these models and diagrams before we go out in the real world. So it's a way to overcome all the barriers to learning about how we can address these complex social problems. I like to think one thing, hopefully, that I'm bringing to it is integrating it with the social marketing. I think this is still true. It's heavy duty. I think you mentioned it can feel overwhelming just taking one of these things on at a time and trying to understand it. Most of the system dynamics work that I see. There's a little unmute there.
presentation. Like I said, their menu, I'll share the link to their menu later on. It's
Thank you. So a lot of the system, most of the system dynamics modeling I see, a lot of it's done consulting work, and some of it's done in-house. It's someone has a complex problem. They want to apply this method to understand where the leverage points are. And then there's a transfer of ownership, of report, recommendations. One of the things that I think is going to be the payoff of this integration with social marketing is we understand, because we've integrated it, we understand not just what's the system structure that's causing whatever the complex, people say wicked problem that you're focusing on, but now you've also got the social marketing to figure out, okay, now how do we act on these leverage points? Do we need to design a behavior change campaign? Are we trying to influence policy? Or are we trying to redesign the system? At some point, even if you're talking about systems change, somebody somewhere has to change their behavior, even if that's a policymaker or some other sort of decision maker. So you're right, it can feel overwhelming, and I can say a little more about any sort of the currently funded work we have, but the basic idea is understanding the systems. And for me, a lot of time that's markets. Markets are a type of system that are driving these health-related social issues that I'm interested in, and many other people are. But then being able to go the next step of, okay, now how do we actually bring about the change that our model led us insights, said, here's where the leverage is. Well, how do you pull the lever? And that's where the social marketing comes in for influencing behavior.
So one of the things I would ask is, are you gathering original data or using secondary data? And then the other big one in public health, and especially in social marketing, is the client involved in the modeling? So when you bring in your models, because the client, the person who gets the goods or services from public health, they see things, and maybe it's a caregiver or a provider, and then you rerun your model. So talk a little bit, and I know you did this in the series I was in. You talked a little bit more about under the hood, and then the other thing I would say is, okay, now we're talking math. That scares a lot of people away. How math intensive is this, or is it something that most people can learn?
Great questions, and appreciate the opportunity to unscare some people. So you do not always need to go to the computational modeling, the simulation modeling, in order to derive the benefits. Really, this is about overcoming barriers to learning, about how to better design, better manage the systems in which we live, learn, work, and play. And then once you know what you want to do, the social marketing can be very beneficial. That's sort of the added value of that. In terms of who's involved in this model building, and I want to make sure to emphasize that it's not, they say it's not just the destination, it's the journey. It's not just getting to having a finished product of a model, it's the whole process of model building, really. That's where the value is. So yes, absolutely involving the people who have lived experience. If you're working on a particular disease or condition, everyone who's part of the system isn't part of the entire system. I'm a part of this, I'm in this section or subsector, you're in this subsector. We all have experiences, and sort of we all have a set of mental models that we think explains how things are happening and what should be done about it. So to take the example of just meeting today with a community partner here, working on lead exposure and lead poisoning in Cleveland, which is at or amongst the worst in the US. We are working with people who have the lived experience, multi-generational trauma, multiple generations of the same family who have been poisoned. How do you engage policymakers locally, engaging landlords who have to get certificates to prove that their property, their house is lead-free? Each of these different groups of people have a piece of the puzzle in their head because they live and they breathe it every single day. So bringing together those people through structured exercises, which is not mathematical at the beginning. It's very much qualitative. So if anybody listening says, I hate calculus, I don't understand it, you put the focus on getting the insights. The very first step is characterizing the problem. You don't have to use fancy math at that part, especially in the group model building way that we do a lot here in our center. So let me know if I glossed over anything, but absolutely, depending on sort of what the problem is and what your goals are, you may not need to go all the way to a simulation model. You might find out just from characterizing a problem longitudinally and tracing out through post-it note activities in a participatory session, posting out feedback, causal feedback structures. You might reveal an insight that says we know exactly what we want to do, and then you're off and running, and that is a value added that you wouldn't have had otherwise with another method. And then hopefully, if you're doing it with us, you are going to think like a marketer, like, okay, I need to influence some behavior. How would a marketer influence behavior? Well, they would offer something, some sort of offering, a product, a service. They would have a promotional strategy, a distribution strategy. So thinking like a marketer then, instead of just delivering insights, but then helping your partners, your community members, implement the recommendations from the modeling.
So we've got some questions in the chat, but what I'd like to do is let's hold on to the questions for a second, keep putting them in. But this is a good transition probably to the second portion of social marketing overview. So, you know, you're an expert, you're on the board of directors, you're an editor of the journal, you have a certificate in it. Tell us, you know, many people in the audience maybe have never heard of social marketing in the context of public health. So tell us a little bit about what it is, what its history is, and then maybe if they want to learn more, what can they do to find out a little bit more? And then the last piece, we'll do some questions and we'll talk about it for veterans. But what is social marketing?
Appreciate the chance to talk about that as well, and some of the history of it, and also maybe try to connect it to more familiar behavior change approaches that folks might be more familiar with. So how does this fit into the puzzle? So social marketing, unfortunately, it's been confused. Boy, we're past a decade now of the confusion, well over a decade of the confusion with social media marketing. So maybe I should have started with that. Hopefully we don't lose any attendees there who are saying, I thought this was social media marketing, I'm out of here. Social media absolutely can, and nowadays definitely often plays a part of the promotional part of the mix, but social marketing, or marketing for social good, some people trace it, at least the idea of it, to a 1951 paper by Wiebe, who was asking, why can't we sell brotherhood like soap? A lot of folks trace the practice of it to 1960s family planning work in India, where marketing principles started being applied to family planning strategies and campaigns. First academic roots of it were 1969, 1971, a couple of papers by a faculty member named Phil Kotler. If anyone here has ever taken a marketing course, you probably had a textbook by Phil Kotler, who's still a thought leader to this day. He's got some great stuff going on. I'm following him on LinkedIn. So the academic roots go back to that point. Some folks in commercial marketing, academic marketing at that time, 70s, were against this idea of the broadening of the scope of marketing. They thought, why are we broadening our scope? That's not where we should be involved. So at least the academics, it wasn't everybody was unanimously on board with this idea that we can sell ideas, social good ideas, just as well as we can sell soap or other products. But people persisted. Folks like Alan Andreessen and Bill Novelli, and through the 80s, it started to pick up steam in the US. CDC and other agencies started to learn about it. So prevention research centers, CDC funded the Florida Prevention Research Center, like I mentioned. But basically, it's about how do you apply the same things that, my webcam up here, why pay a premium for a shirt that has a horsey stitched into it when you could get the exact same shirt without the horse, the polo rider stitched into it for a much cheaper price? What's the story that somebody's trying to tell about themselves, to their family, to the world? So kind of part of my red thread, or my through line, that I'm describing my academic career path right now, is I study health-related social issues through the lens of story and storytelling, including the marketing of ideas. Happy to put a finer point on any of that if you'd like. But basically, the idea is we can use the same things that marketers use to influence behavior by offering some compelling offer, a product, a service, an experience to influence behavior. And it's based on multiple ideas, one of which being self-interest. Most of us act out of self-interest. If you want me to do something, what's in it for me? And so that comes up against some of the limitations of a purely educational approach. Often education approaches create increasing awareness, changing knowledge, but then how do you get across the finish line? So offering an entire mix. It's not just enough to invent something, a product or service. You've got to price it at the right point. Price isn't always monetary. You need to promote it, and you have to distribute it. So it's an entire mix, and there are many P's that have been added as well. But does that help in terms of if you just look at the same sort of techniques that get you to buy brand A over brand B, these things can and have been applied ethically. And so in terms of the US social marketing system, not surprising, I have a model of the US social marketing system that I work with. There are all sorts of players there as well. There are the clients, there are the practitioners. I'm in a part, I consider myself an academic. So there are people who have tons more experience than me actually practicing. I like to think my part of the contributing to the puzzle is through studying and trying to push the envelope on what might work better or differently. And that's the integration of the systems science with the marketing. Did that help at all, Doug?
Absolutely. Dr. Cersei, go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much. I just thank you for that really great definition. I was just wondering if you could offer like perhaps a few examples of, some social marketing that folks might have seen. I was thinking of, promotion of the food pyramid, and, anti-smoking campaigns. I just was wondering if you could share some of that.
When I took the courses at USF, I was surprised that how many social marketing campaigns that I knew before I took the course. One is, if you've ever heard the phrase, don't mess with Texas. Don't Mess with Texas, Nancy Lee, who's kind of, she wrote the book literally with Philip Kotler. It's a great book. And she's been doing this for a long time, and she's kind of twilighting her career. She's a little less involved. She'll still come to the conferences and stuff. But when I went through, she taught my first course, and she talked about all these campaigns. So Don't Mess with Texas was a anti-littering campaign in the state of Texas that actually worked so well that it actually stopped working because it became a t-shirt and everyone forgot it was a litter campaign. But if you drive through Texas, you'll see a sign that says fine up to, and it's about don't littering. I would say the education, if you take any courses or if you read any of the books or go to the website, the Social Marketing Association of North America website, it's very case study based. The other thing is, and I'll turn it to you in a second, Brian. The other thing is that there's lots of examples of campaigns that fail miserably because people get enamored with the products. They want to hand out a backpack, or they want to hand out Florida free tobacco, right? Or Florida tobacco free, whichever it is. There's mixed literature about it being successful or not successful. And it's debatable because some things worked, and you can tell that they work because it's change of behavior. If smoking goes down, you can measure it. It's not about how many t-shirts we handed out. And often in public health, what I found through this study is, and we measure outputs, not outcomes. And so what do you think, Brian? Just come up in Savannah and in the conferences and the literature?
Yeah, if I would say people become enamored with the promotional part, that P of the marketing mix. People want to go right to a social media campaign, and then they say, and this is our social marketing campaign, and absolutely not trying to push anybody out of the tribe, and we need all hands on deck, but we still need more examples of where's the product. So I was just talking about sort of people act based on self-interest. And so how do you facilitate an exchange? How do you offer something of value to facilitate the behavior that you're trying to bring about, behavior that would be good for the person, but also good for society? And to one example of a campaign that folks might have seen is the Truth campaign. That's a very high profile example against anti-tobacco, and a really nice part of that for me and my argument about marketing driven systems change is you've got markets and marketing going on multiple levels. It was markets and marketing that influenced the problem of smoking and all the consequences. And now here you have marketing being applied to take down the markets that led to the problem in the first place. So it works really well, especially with young audiences and young activists who like that idea of we're gonna take down the system that caused the problem in the first place, using the same tools against them that they used against us. So Truth is a big example that people may have heard of.
So I'm going to go to the chat. If you have any questions, I'll go through the chat. I'll read a couple questions, grab what you want, address what you want. And then we're going to focus it in the next section really on veterans, but some of these already address veterans. So Dr. Cersei wrote a comment. There's lots of veterans who are concerned about potentially losing access to services. How can social marketing approaches help with communicating changes in benefits? And then it's a couple questions in there. And maybe this is bigger than just veterans right now in society with the reduction of government support to public health programs. How can social marketing help with maybe adjustments to the availability? And have you seen anything? Is this a point of discussion right now in the community doing this work? You know, losing your grant or using your public health money.
Yeah, it is. And it just was in a recent social marketing meeting where folks were talking about sort of losing their funding. But talking about services, I actually, this is timely, working on, I want to keep in mind the Pracademics, so not just talk academics, but I like to think, I'm trying to work on studies and research that is practical. And I think this is a good example. So I'm working on a paper that's under review right now with the journal. And the focus of it is I'm trying to argue for this, it's a services marketing type paper. So arguing for what does system dynamics and social marketing have to offer for studying and improving the provision of services. And that paper is in the context of domestic violence. When I get my choice of topics, I choose it's either injury prevention or violence prevention. So thinking about it like a marketer, especially a marketer who understands marketing systems, taking the example of domestic violence, I start with looking, I want to look longitudinally. I want to look at trends. That's where the dynamics part of system dynamics comes in. So stop looking at events and stop thinking cross-sectionally. If we're going to take on these big problems, that means they have a history to them. That means you need to broaden your time horizon and look at the trends and think, look at the shapes. The shapes of the trends will give you clues as to what's the system structure that's driving these problems. So let me know if this goes deeper than you want, but the paper in question that's integrating, I'm arguing for social marketing and systems thinking about domestic violence services, looking at the demand for domestic violence services, emergency shelter services. It was already going up with programs, domestic violence programs being over capacity. And that happened with the Great Recession. And then things maybe leveled off a little bit, but then looking at the trends, COVID happened and capacity is now overshot, demand for services overshot capacity again. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about market for services. And one thing we haven't talked about so far is, okay, stay with this example of domestic violence survivors who often have children and they need help and often an emergency. Well, that's a lot of people. Are they all alike? No. So we haven't talked about marketing principles of segmentation and targeting. Word targeting doesn't feel right talking about sensitive topic like domestic violence, but that's the language that gets used. So having to think about, we can't serve everybody equally well. So how do we figure out how to segment the market? If we're using taxpayer dollars to work on this problem, we need to show that we're going to have the best possible return on investment for the campaign or the initiative that we're putting on. So we've talked about marketing principles of self-interest, exchange, segmentation, targeting, and then getting to the heart of it. So what's the story? What you have to do in consumer behavior? Like if you've ever been intercepted shopping somewhere and asked you to take a survey or asked to do an interview, offered a gift card. So figuring out, once you know who you're trying to serve, what's that person's story? Creating a persona to understand what moves and motivates them. And then you craft your offering in a way, your product, price, place, promotion, in a way that helps them tell that story, realize that story, and realize who they want to be and avoid who they don't want to be.
So my colleague, Dr. Sadeh Abdullah, she's a fellow with me. She actually did her presentation a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. She writes in the chat, desired outcomes are dependent on the duration and intensity of social marketing interventions. Do you find that a lot of people, like, if we do this, we'll solve the problem, when actually, you know, in a marketing campaign, Coca-Cola markets 4th of July every year because they know, but everybody, there's always new people. And then you talked a little bit about kind of the terms of reference. You're using marketing language, and some people with public health have challenges with that. So one is the strategic approach that marketing brings, and then the terms of reference. How do you act as kind of a bridge or an interlocutor between public health and the marketing concepts that you use?
No, that's totally a fair point. There are lots and lots of examples of bad marketing, marketing done unethically, and just because we say, "Hey, we're doing social marketing," that means we have a social mission. That means there are no ethical issues. That's not true. You still need to attend to many ethical issues, including use of incentives. Are you being coercive, or is this person being given the free choice to change their behavior or not? Regarding the point about, let me know if I misinterpret it, outcomes being dependent on dose and duration of the intervention. I appreciate that question, and if I heard it right, and it's part of why I think I was drawn and still am so excited about this idea of integrating social marketing, traditional social marketing with systems thinking, because so much of social marketing is short term. So get to the question or the point about dose and duration. It's campaign oriented, right? Some problem flares up. We should do something about it. Let's do a campaign. Maybe the campaign runs for 12 months if you're lucky, and then you're measuring hopefully along the way, and then you see at the end, did we accomplish our behavior change goals? Whereas with system dynamics, I'm interested, not to say that a lot of the published cases are not important. You can find social marketing applied to scooping up dog poop, other things I don't think people would consider massive social problems. I'm interested in applying it to the big social ills, which means one-off behavior change campaigns are not really going to, they're not going to solve the problem, which means finding through the systems modeling how are we going to is there a leverage point low enough, low-hanging fruit, that if we act on it, that we can get to our goals? Or sometimes you find there's no changing this percentage here. There's no changing this value here. The only thing that's going to get us is redesigning a system or radically transforming the paradigms, the mindsets out of which the system came. So if I missed the mark on that question, please, happy to share my email for anybody that wants to follow up afterwards.
So what I'd like to do now is transition us to looking at social marketing from a veteran perspective.
Mhm.
So again, I'm here today as a private citizen. Everything that I say is my own comments, my little disclaimer. This is my university's website. We have a press, we do research. We do research focused on what people within the special operations community in the United States. But what it's interesting is for public health people, John Patterson is a retired Army chaplain. He's a PhD chaplain. He's got a doctorate of divinity, but he's also got a doctorate, I believe, in social work. But we're looking at moral injury. Why are military people? Why do they have PTSD? Why do they have isolation? Why do they have chemical dependency? And so one of the areas we looked at was moral injury. There's a bunch of research that we've done on that. But more importantly, I'd like to show you this. When I studied this, and then I said, hey, we should probably look at this. And R. Craig LaFay is a leader within social marketing. Brian has actually co-authored with him. He's a luminary in the field. And we actually commissioned him to come in and look at the interventions that special operations in the United States was doing. And what I asked Brian in preparation for this talk, I said, would you be willing to look at this and then tell me what you see and what you know as a citizen, what you know as a scholar in this space? Because we still have challenges with veteran suicide. We have challenges with post-traumatic stress, just all kinds of issues. And it's one of those things where why are we not doing better? And I think that one of the things Brian and I talked about is it's really hard in the VA or in the Department of Defense to find instances of where people are using good social marketing techniques and literature. So Brian, let's talk about that for a little bit. If you have questions, write them in the chat. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate. I mean, I'd known that Craig was doing this monograph a while ago, and then meeting you brought it sort of back into my mind. I hadn't thought about it for a while, so I appreciate that you commissioned this when you did. So yeah, I did take another look at it, and so a lot of thoughts come to mind, and I have a lot of notes, which you and I will probably talk again after today about this. And like I mentioned, also appreciate this because when I choose my topics, it's violence or injury prevention. So this is spot on. I mean, one of the things that comes to mind, which we haven't talked about so far today, is, and this is a deficiency, at least in U.S. social marketing, is people talk about the marketing, but what about market? What is the market? We don't talk about markets. We don't I think most social marketing classes programs don't teach about markets. What is a market? We talk about audiences, because I think there are multiple reasons why I talk about audiences. A lot of the people who teach and do social marketing came from a health communication or health education background, so they understand audiences, but that's not, an audience isn't necessarily the same thing as a market. So markets are where buyers and sellers come to exchange to facilitate transactions based on self-interest. So going through the monograph, there's so much good stuff in here, and this is any comments here are not knocks or disses. They're just things that sort of I pick up on. And so this is something I notice, studying social marketing, people's campaigns who put their heart and soul into it. There's very little talk about what is the market, who are the buyers and sellers, how are they connected. There are people who have a problem. Let's segment. Well, markets involve supply, demand. So a lot of that is missing. So I throw it back to you, because you are in this space much more than I am. Do people talk about this as a market for provision of services for veterans and then demand for services? If not, I think that could be an area that better understanding might lead to some better outcomes.
I think that it does, because one of the things is, in the marketer in the civilian world sells the product, right? The car, the soda, whatever. They're selling something it's very transactional. And in health, we're trying to do better outcomes, right? And I went to a thing on last Thursday on brain health. There's a lot of people doing stuff in Florida on brain health. But what does that mean? Is that TBI, PTSD? Is it emotional health? What is it? Well, and then kind of as the conversation went, it had to do with collaboration for resources or competition for resources. So now we're into maybe economics. And so the market, the
Yeah.
economics of buy low, sell high, or what's efficiency or things like that. But I also saw immediately from a social marketing perspective, I saw the 4 Ps. Like they want me to come to Tampa General, and it's not a knock on Tampa General, but to go do yoga. And I don't know if you've been to Tampa, but Tampa General is downtown on an island in the
Yeah.
bay, Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
There's 2 bridges. You can't get across it. It's just, it's a bad location, but it works for people who have time during the day. So now you're segmenting out anyone that has a job. Anyone that has a job can't get there, or you have kids, maybe you can't get there. And I think that I think what's interesting is I don't see a systemic approach to looking at the market, right? And so I think that that's a piece of it. Uh, Dr. Abdullah wrote again, interesting distinction between audience and market, because there are people you're talking to that are not going to buy. They're not your market. They're never going to buy. The barrier is they don't have efficacy, or they don't have the opportunity, or they don't have the money.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw out a piece of research I did. So at one point, there's a fact out there. So here's the market for veterans. There are 6.1% of the American population are veterans. That's everything from World War II to the kid who reenlisted on Saturday at the parade. 1.7 million are women. So 10.9% of the total veterans. So of the 6.1, 10% of that is women. World War II veterans make up 10% of all veterans, and actuarially they will pass away. 24% white, 12% black, 8.6% Hispanic, 25% are greater than 75. So again, is who can I actually approach with these campaigns? And I think that uh, the veteran population is different. They're geographically dispersed in certain ways. And I just think that social marketing for me really kind of like, I did a study during my course where I looked at where veterans hospitals were built, and this is about 10 years ago.
Okay.
We built veterans hospitals where people used to live after World War II. We're building a lot of hospitals. You hear it in the news, but we have to build care. Well, the other thing is they realize they need to do civilian care. You don't have to go to a veteran hospital to get veteran care because it's
Yeah.
care. It's just health care, but so you hear a bunch of this. I just encourage not only for veterans health, but for anyone doing public health. I just think social marketing, when I got into it, it opened my eyes to so many things that I think can be improved on. I wasn't going to say that we're doing poorly, right? And from a veteran perspective, being inside the cohort, I'm in the market. Like I'm not even hearing any of this, and I'm looking for it. I'm studying this, and I don't know what's going on, which means you're not hitting your target. Your target's dug. I'm about to be retired, hopefully. Maybe my kids are grown, you know what I mean? But I'm starting to be unhealthy. I'm starting to be more unhealthier. And isn't that what we say? We want Doug to be healthier for longer in veteran health. And actually, number one is you want Doug to stay alive, right? So in this space, a lot of these are issues of life and death. And then you add issues of quality of life. So um, question in the chat, are social marketing strategies stratified by veterans age? If it's done properly, it is, because young people want one thing, people that develop type 2 diabetes or have bone and arthritis issues. A good campaign should meet the needs. Would you agree, Brian? A good campaign, you can see it.
And even further, when your resources allow, you're probably better off doing your segmentation and focusing beyond just demographic features. Those are important for figuring out how do we find them and locate them, but it's a classification. It's often not the most important thing for figuring out what's driving behavior. So it's lifestyle, psychographics, a whole bunch of things. So multifactorial segmentation, even better.
So if you had a chance, you're king for a day, and you can talk to the Surgeon General of the Department of Defense and the Director of Veterans Health, what would you say? What would you recommend be done in the area of veteran public health? Easy question, right?
uh, Maybe I should, well, maybe I should answer in terms of the Surgeon General, because I don't want to pretend to be an expert on veterans health. I would.
There's a lot going on, right? There's a lot going on. You see it, even if you're not the target of. There's a lot going on in veteran health and military health.
I guess I would might change my answer next time you ask me, but sitting here right now, this reminds me of a quote from an old social marketer named Bill Smith with AED, and he said, "Behavior change is difficult. Don't do it if you don't have to." And kind of scratch your head when you first hear that. Okay, what does that mean? Don't do it if you don't have to. What are we doing here? And what he meant was exhaust all the system level changes, opportunities that you can think of before you say, you know what, we have the only way to do this to make the situation better is to go directly individual level behavior change interventions or attempts. And so I know I'm biased because of my systems orientation, but I guess I would encourage the Surgeon General to take a look at all the campaigns, the ongoing ones, the initiatives where they're trying to take on public health, nasty public health problems by taking an individual level behavior change approach and ask them to think like a systems thinker and see, are there leverage points at higher levels where we could get a better return on our investment?
So I'm checking the questions. I don't see any additional questions. With that, Brian, any final thoughts for the group? Is social marketing something that most people working in public health should take a look at because it'll help them do what they do? What are your final thoughts?
Thanks for the opportunity to, yes, I think they should, but I think the onus is on us, the social marketing field, to do a better job of packaging and offering social marketing in a way that people don't get turned off by it, they don't get overwhelmed, make it more feasible, make it more practical, and make sure that people understand that it can be done ethically. I think I put the onus more on us as a field to deliver it in a way that people get excited by it, not turned off by it, and it's practical and sustainable. That's my closing thought, is putting it back on us as a field.
Well, thanks, Brian. Again, Brian is on the board of directors for Social Marketing Association of North America. I put the link in the chat, www.smana.org. There's a lot of good information, free information. If you want to know more, it's out there. I appreciate all of you coming, Veteran Voices in Public Health. Hopefully I did a pretty good job, and hopefully you had a nice time. My goal is as we edit this down and I post it, I will add some links to Brian's work, some social marketing stuff, and also some VA references. Future podcasts. I'm interested in what you think I should potentially talk about. So I will put my email address in the chat. Future editions, I would like to talk about women's veteran health, LGBTQ veterans health, other issues of addiction, brain health. There's a lot of great people out there doing great work. And my goal is to bring them in so we can hear those good veteran voices in public health. With that, I'll turn it over to the fellowship director, Sabath.
So
Or
I
Dr.
just
Searcy.
wanted to remind everyone, there's a poll that's been launched. Please take a moment to complete it before we conclude today. It's just a handful of questions. It'll take you less than 30 seconds to complete. So what a wonderful session. Thank you very much, Doug. And also Dr. Brian. It was enlightening. Also, before I end today, I wanted to ask Sabath if you wanted to come off screen and give us any parting words. I also wanted to thank everyone for being here today. We have some folks who join us every time we have a webinar. We call our frequent flyers. We absolutely so much appreciate all of you and the great engagement that you have with us, and for supporting our work as well as that of our thought leaders and other folks who work with us. We also are continuing our enhanced, our expedited campaign for a few more days. So please be sure to get your manuscripts in at bcphr.org. I'll put that in the chat. You also may want to know that we are still recruiting for our under 40 Public Health Catalyst Awards. And I'll put that link in the chat as well. But Doug, what a wonderful time this was. We are done. However, I am going to keep this survey open just for a few minutes more to get everyone's feedback. And with that, I think we can bid everyone adieu, unless you have any other things you'd like to share, Doug. Oh, and Sabath, here you are.
Yeah, thanks, Cersei. I think had a bit of glitch, but yeah, thank you, Dr. Brian, and the expose. It was really a good one, and it was really, really, really specific. So thank you for coming on board, and thank you, Doug. Like great, 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 great presentation. And thank you to the audience for putting sending in those feedback already. And we are looking forward to having the continuing with the fellowship and even going on to produce more episodes for his podcast. And, hoping that the feedback from this particular session would help improve his overall thought leadership. So thank you everyone for joining as well. And you'll be receiving our surveys after the Zoom. And please, 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 we need those feedback. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Thank you, everyone. And I'm going to end the webinar.
Okay, thanks.